Hello everybody and welcome back to a brand new video. Make sure you like this video down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. And today we have to talk about the polls, except this time we have to talk about two types of polls because there's been a lot of contradictory polling that has been coming out, and you have these pollsters that are going to war at this very moment. This is a poll right here. This is a poll from ABC News. Who works for ABC News? Nate Silver, better known as Nate Plastic. He runs 538. He works for ABC News Washington Post. And they released a poll today out of Michigan and Wisconsin. Now, they say that in the state of Wisconsin, and this is serious, this is not me just making this up, Joe Biden has a 17% lead over Donald Trump in the state of Wisconsin. And even if Biden were to narrowly win the state of Wisconsin, this poll is not going to age well. It is a definite outlier, but Nate Silver went on social media and was defending the poll and defending their methodology while he constantly slanders Trafalgar, which nailed the Rust Belt in 2016, for having a poll that virtually has Trump and Biden tied in Wisconsin. So it's funny to look at this and see the fact that Nate Silver is trumpeting a poll that does not make any sense in reality, but trying to slander the pollsters that actually were more accurate in nailing 2016 than he was. And Nate Silver is the Don of what I like to call the Election Prediction Mafia, or the Election Mafia for short. Now, I've gotten a lot of people that say, I know you've coined this term, but what exactly does it mean? And this is a definition that's actually very good, and it was written by one of you guys actually, saying, a group of people who exist in circles on Twitter, US Elections Atlas, and in our polling institutions that twist the data to favor their side in order to change the outcome of the election. And right here you can see exactly what Nate Plastic's poll was trying to do. And this race has two narratives, and I've been talking about this for a while. The one narrative says Biden is going to win in a landslide. The other narrative says Donald Trump is probably going to be favored to win re-election. Even if it is going to be by a narrow margin, he is still favored. And you see this because there's a lot of volatility in the polling. Some of the polls you'll see 4 or 5 pollsters will have Biden up by 10 points or more, but also there's going to be 4 or 5 pollsters that have the popular vote within 5% or so. Very, very interesting things to look at here, because you see this throughout. Trump is not going to lose Wisconsin by 17 points. That is virtually unheard of. Obama, in his big victory when he ran up the totals in the Rust Belt, had extremely high turnout in the city of Milwaukee. You saw Wisconsin go blue by like 16 points. That's not going to happen this time, especially because Donald Trump won the state of Wisconsin. And even though it was somewhat of a lower turnout election, 64% of non-voters were non-college educated whites, a majority of them being males. So Trump likely in a higher turnout election would have done even better, especially because a lot of the drop-off in turnout was from the Waukesha area, the WOW counties, Washington, Ozaukee, and Waukesha counties. You did see a big drop-off, and Trump did actually worse than Romney in 2 out of those 3 counties. It's going to be interesting to see if they swing to the right this cycle. A lot of people in the Election Mafia and some other people say that they won't, but there's a lot of metrics, including the 2018 midterms and the fact that a lot of the establishmentarian conservatives who were not really backing him in 2016 are in full support of him this time around. So I do expect him to do a little bit better in the WOW counties, because that's exactly where the Daily Wire type conservative base is, not necessarily the Lincoln Project type of conservative, which really isn't a conservative at all. They're nowhere to be found in the WOW counties. They strongly backed the Republicans in 2018. So I would expect Trump to improve in those areas. And in the rural part of the state, if Donald Trump doesn't really see a massive drop-off, he's basically a lock to win the state of Wisconsin. And you can look at the early voting data. It also backs this up. But beforehand, it's important to show you why this race really has two narratives, and the data is only backing one of them up. Democrats out of the state of Florida said that they needed a 650,000 vote lead in the early vote to have a chance going into Election Day. These aren't my words, these are the words of Democrats, and they also expected the in-person early vote to roughly split 50-50. So what you can actually see here is that lead was almost at 500,000, but since the in-person early voting has started, it is now down to 207,000. By the end of the day, that may actually go under 200,000. So the Democrats are going to say, the Republicans are just cannibalizing their voters. But at the same time, a lot more super voters are left on the Republican side, and it's not even close. It's by a 245,000 vote margin here. So I do expect Republicans to actually keep improving, and on election day, the turnout will be massively Republican. By all polling metrics, that's what it's showing. So it's going to be very difficult for Biden to win Florida looking at these metrics. This website here particularly said Biden advantage within 5% or so is excellent for Donald Trump due to the COVID-19 influenced shift to vote by mail for Democrats. And you can look at this here. Right now, it is within a 4-point game. Right now, Democrats lead by 3.85%, and even in their own voter file, the unaffiliated voters were roughly breaking even, and that was before a lot of the in-person early voting had started. So very interesting stuff to look at here. And overall, Trump is in fairly good shape, and you could look at this early vote here. This is nationwide. There's already been 64 million votes cast, and it is true, this website does not calculate every single state. Alabama, South Carolina, a few others, mostly red states actually, are not exactly being counted in this data set right here. But what we do see is Democrats have roughly a 5 million vote lead, and they should have a big lead in the early vote. So out of the 64 million ballots cast, the Democrats have a 5,000 vote lead. Only a 5,000 vote lead. That's not exactly where they need it to be to win this election. And if the polls that say that half of the Democrats that are going to vote have already voted compared to a much lesser share of the Republican Party, it's possible that the Republicans are going to do even way better than I expect here, because they're only down by 5.2 million votes. Now, do keep in mind, this is not a perfect model here. Clearly, they try to allocate the unaffiliated voters by party ID and trying to check out where the party switchers traditionally are compared to the past few cycles, how they voted in primaries, etc. But it's very interesting data to look at because it is super contradictory to virtually every other data point that we've seen. If you want to look at the state of Wisconsin alone here, we can go down to Wisconsin, look at it by modeled party. In the early vote, Democrats have just a 4% lead, less than a 4% lead. Yes, there are a lot more unaffiliated voters this time, but it's looking fairly good for the Republicans. They're already almost to 40% without any unaffiliateds being accounted for their side. So the fact that they're only at 40% in Nate Plastic's poll alone is a pretty big joke, especially because a lot of Republicans in the Rust Belt plan on voting on election day. And you can see this here, out of 1.3 million votes that have been cast, which is probably around half of the ballots that are going to be cast this cycle in Wisconsin. Republicans are only down by 50,000, and we don't know exactly where the unaffiliated voters are going, even if they did split Democrat. There are enough Republicans to vote on election day to virtually make that up. And if you want to look at the counties here, we could go down to the WOW counties. You could look and go all the way down here to Waukesha County, and you can see that the Republicans in the early voting have a 76-8 lead. Those are like black vote margins right there for the Republicans coming out of these WOW counties. And you can go down to Washington County and you see a similar thing, 85-4. And again, this is not perfect, but if this is anywhere close to accurate, remember, Target Smart is a Democrat-aligned firm. There is going to be massive trouble not only in the polling industry, but the Democrat Party as a whole. Republicans are up, according to this, by 27,000 raw votes. If you look at Waukesha, look at the vote margins here. They are up by over 80,000 votes. If you do go down to Ozaukee County, the Republicans have a 70-10 lead, and they lead by 16,000 raw votes. Big margins here out of Wisconsin. It does not seem to be enough for the Democrats to make massive gains statewide, because that is where a lot of the population in the state of Wisconsin is. If you want to go down to a place like Racine, Republicans are also doing much better than last cycle. Democrats had a 13-point lead. Republicans now have a 21% lead, and they lead by 8,000 votes in Racine. And if you want to go to Kenosha, where there's been a lot of civil unrest, this is actually one of the places where you don't see a massive increase to the Republicans, although there are a lot more unaffiliated voters here. So the population centers really looking fairly good for the Republican Party. To contrast it, Democrats are doing a very, very good job in Dane County as expected, even better than last time, although a lot of those votes are in from Dane County. A lot of Democrats are voting by absentee, so it really is no surprise there. So Democrats are getting their base out in Dane County, although Republicans have a lot more room for growth in the WOW counties than Democrats do in Dane, because they really did turn their base out big time last time. If you look at Milwaukee County, which is their other stronghold, not really a significant gain percentage-wise. If you do look at the raw vote margins, they do have a decent lead there, but keep in mind a lot of that is early voting, which does sway heavily into the Democrat column nationwide. So either way, you can't really go by this data 100%. But it's looking like this is not going to be a 17-point win for Joe Biden in the state of Wisconsin. It's looking like this could be accurate. Trump could lose by 0.4%, or he could win, because this is within the margin of error. There's still 1% undecided, and 3.1% going to the Libertarian candidate, who is not going to get 3%. Maybe they'll get 1.5 at most. They're not going to be getting 3, and I would assume a lot of that vote could defect to Donald Trump too. So we'll really have to keep our eyes on this, and we'll really have to look at this. But either way, it just shows that there's two different narratives. There's a narrative that Biden is laying on a beatdown, or there's a narrative that Donald Trump is in this game, if not leading, because there's been a lot of polls released out of Pennsylvania recently, several polls this week that have Trump up in Pennsylvania, and now they're coming out with a lot of polls having him down 10 in Michigan, but then you have Trafalgar saying Trump is up by 1 in Michigan. So a lot of conflicting data here. We're going to have to wait and see. Leading up to Election Day, I'm going to be doing my final prediction in a couple of days here. But either way, the actual data of the vote by mail, it's looking very favorable to Republicans as they are showing up in the in-person early voting. And there are a lot of super voters left that are going to be voting on Election Day. So anyways, guys, thanks for watching this video. Please like this video down below, comment down below, and subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell for notifications so you never miss another video. Follow me on social media, become a member, donate to the Patreon, or subscribe. Star links in description. As always, guys, thanks for watching. Red Eagle, out.